Okay, so first of all, thank you to the BCAS. What an amazing setup out here. This is like absolutely amazing. And I believe we had some good sessions in the afternoon, and I look forward to sharing some thoughts and perspectives with all of you out here. Thanks to my friend Vaibhav Manek for dragging me into this. Vaibhav, thank you. What actually I'm going to do today is spend maybe 30 to 35 minutes on sharing some thoughts with this group on reimagining the new age professional services firm. And then we have some questions. We'll have time to take some questions as well. First of all, the way I really like the whole concept of this session, because not talking about today, it's talking about the future. You know, it's forcing us to sit back and think about what our profession will be in the future. So I'm really excited at kind of sharing some thoughts around that with you. As some of you may know, a lot of what I talk about is going to be based on my 27 years with a Big Four firm, which I will not name. Why give them free publicity, eh? But I spent 27 years with a Big Four consulting company. I started, co-founded Unicus, which is by itself a new age consulting company a year ago. We've kind of scaled up very significantly. We are 350 people now across 8 offices in India, the US, the Middle East. And some of that experience over the last 1 year is something I would like to share with this group today, right? So I'll start up with pointing out some very basic facts about professional services. Historically, when we thought about professional services firms, we thought about the Big Four. We thought about then other global consulting companies. So think Grant Thornton, think BDO, and other global firms. And then we basically had a lot of professional services companies that operated at the country level, right? So focusing on audit, focusing on taxation, focusing on different types of advisory, but largely confined to a geography. That's how we saw professional services historically. But I think that's changing. Today, as some of you may have experienced, legal firms are doing a lot what traditionally tax firms were doing. So we see instances of large legal firms bringing in tax practitioners, tax leaders, because they realize that when they are advising their clients on legal matters, on transactions, on related matters, tax is an integral part of really what their clients are looking for. So the line is getting very blurred between where legal stops and where tax starts. Similarly, if you really look at the big consulting companies and the big tax firms, they are building in legal capabilities into what they do as well. And I think the point I want to highlight to this group and leave for reflection is you don't know where your next set of competitors is going to come from. And then you talk about technology companies, right? So we do at Unicus, one of our key businesses is ESG and climate change consulting. My team just told me that we had a big pitch in the UAE where we actually competed on a ESG consulting project for a big healthcare company. There were 7 bidders. There were the Big Four. There were specialized ESG companies. And there was Accenture, right? Now, historically, you would not think a technology company like Accenture would focus on consulting services, but that's changing as well. Because what the big technology companies are realizing is that solutions today are not just about a technology solution, but how do you weave in domain expertise in whichever area as a part of your thing. So you really have to focus on what's happening in the whole tech consulting services as well, because that's really your competition. Obviously, and needless to say, Unicus won that project, competing against all of the people that I spoke about. Okay, if we didn't win, I would not have spoken about it. So that's another area, but do keep out. And I'll tell you from my experience with a lot of consulting companies. You take Infosys, you take Capgemini. You take any of the big consulting company, or big tech company, they're building consulting capabilities, which we should be aware of as we think about where the profession is headed for tomorrow. And if that wasn't enough, you have the tech product companies, right? How many of you, listen, I'm gonna get people involved now that the tea break is done. How many of you are tax practitioners who do personal taxation? Okay, your numbers are dwindling already. You know, I mean, think of people like ClearTax who did not exist till a few years ago, right? Think about productization of services. I think increasingly what you will realize is that technology and technology product companies are going to do or replace a lot of the work that we effectively as professional services people have prided ourselves in. Think about legal and regulatory compliance. The amount of effort that goes into ensuring regulatory compliance, there are tech products that enable companies to do that. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the whole sustainability space, but in the whole sustainability consulting area, one of the most complex things that we did as consulting people is what is called greenhouse gas emission inventorization, GHG inventorization. Today, there are technology products that do that for you. So I think from a competition perspective, we as professional services practitioners have to look out not just for the traditional sources of competition that we thought we had to deal with, right, which is the big four, the global companies, or our competitor locally, but we equally have to think about a much wider scope of competitors, which includes the legal firms, which includes the tech services company, and which include the tech product companies. So that's really the landscape as far as the boundaries of what I see as professional services evolving for the future. I think one of the advantages that many of you have, and many of you run your very successful professional services firm, the one big advantage you have, which you should always build on in my mind, which is the future, is a very, very strong focus on three things, as we know: clients, people, and technology. That is the way I believe the future is going to be. And the reason I call this out is this is an advantage which many of the, not the very big global firms. The global firms have a lot of bureaucracy, okay? And I have lived through that for many years, so I talk from experience. And I think the important part is, if we want to be a relevant professional services firm for the future, we have to focus on clients, people, and technology. And I'm going to repeat this. At Unicus, we have a mantra. We say, if it is not related to our clients or to our people or technology, it is not relevant. We don't spend any time on that at all. We are ruthless. We hate leadership titles. So we have no titles in our organization. So whenever I bring in a partner or a talent from a big four, the first question they ask me is that, so Jamil, what will be my title? And I'll say partner, that's it. There's no title beyond that. You're not head of nothing. Yeah, we don't believe in titles. We hate titles. The second thing we hate with equal zeal is this concept of leadership teams. We hate leadership teams actually. Yeah? We don't hate leaders, we hate leadership teams. Because we believe that actually anything that takes you away from serving your clients, from dealing with your people, or building a technology product is absolutely useless in a professional services organization. And that's the spirit with which we have built Unicus, and that's the spirit with which I think we should reflect on what professional services could be in the future. So what does being relevant for the client mean? This is a question I like us to just reflect a little bit deeply on. The question that's always asked is, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a generalist? Do you want to do everything? Or do you want to be a specialist that is known for doing a few things which are best in class? Yeah? My personal call is that in 5 years, the services industry will end up where the manufacturing industry has ended up over the last 30 years. If you look at manufacturing, what's really happened is what I call a disaggregation of manufacturing. You don't go to a supplier and say, listen, I want to build this, give me all the parts. Nobody does that. You disaggregate your requirement, and that's how best-in-class value chains have evolved over time. Disaggregation of services will happen. So the day of the generalists, in my mind, are over. and therefore we effectively, the question to ask is, if you are a professional services firm, what are you known for? What is your specialization, and how would you like to be known in the future? Now, one of the counterpoints there is that, you know, really clients want a lot of things, and therefore you'll always be tempted to say, look, if my client wants, if I'm doing X and clients want Y, let me do Y as well. I personally think until you get to a particular scale, to do that is to dilute your brand. You know, I was talking over coffee about a firm I used to admire a lot, not one of the large firms, but a global firm altogether. This firm I really used to admire for their focus on risk consulting. At a point in time, if I had to go for risk consulting, internal audit kind of work, I would tell my clients, you know, where we were the auditors at my firm, that look, this is the firm to go to. I no longer recommend them, or didn't recommend them for the last few years, because they just effectively thought scale meant everything, and they could just go on adding new capabilities without really realizing they're diluting their brand, right? So I think it's very important to ask this question, what are you known for? Again, for those of you who followed Unicus, we actually are known only for 3 things. We are known for ESG and climate consulting. We are known for accounting and reporting consulting and risk consulting, right? That's the area we want to play in. I think when choosing what you're known for, the other important question to ask really is that what the work you're doing, is that brand dependent or not brand dependent? So when we were founding Unicus, you know, and why did we choose these areas? Because our belief for these 3 areas thrive based on capabilities and skills and experience, and not on the brand. On the other hand, if you look at valuations or you look at diligences, maybe they thrive on brands because people value brand more than what they value the specialization, the skills that you bring in. So very important question, what are you known for? You know, and again, my vote really is specialization, and specialist firms will prevail over the generalist firms over time. Food for thought, happy to be challenged at an appropriate time. Can you go global? You know, a lot of people believe and are tempted to say India is our home territory. I'm assuming, since I see mostly you know, Indian colleagues here, and therefore we can't go outside India. I think that is absolutely not true, actually. On day 0, when we founded Unicus, we said we will go global. On day 0, not 1 week later, we said we will go global. We have offices today in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, in Silicon Valley, in New York, in Riyadh, in 1 year. Because our belief really is that if you pick the right frameworks, so let's say, for example, accounting and reporting. Accounting and reporting is the same across the world now. US GAAP and IFRS are fairly similar. Internal financial controls and ICOFR are fairly similar. ESG and sustainability is similar whether you kind of trained in India or you trained globally, right? So if you pick up the right framework, I think there is a big possibility of going global, and I would again urge people to think about whether what you do has the ability to go global, right? That's really the belief. And my friend Vaibhav Manik, I don't want to embarrass you, I always call them out as a great example of how KNAV has been built over the last 25 years on the back of, you know, starting in a particular place, but today I would not call them an Indian company, I would call them a global company, right? Because they're equally successful in the United States as compared to what they are successful in India sector. So question and a challenge, do you have in it on you? And I think the new age professional services firm would have to in some way go global, either on itself or through alliances. And I'll come to that a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to build everything yourself, but you have to be a part of something where you're able to serve your clients on a holistic basis. So again, food for thought out there. You know, one of the things I've always kind of maintained is a lot of clients end up taking services from the big firms because there is an inertia. People actually want to work with brands they are familiar with, right? This also happens to you as a consumer. If you're consuming something and you see a new brand or a not that well-known brand, you're tempted to fall back on a brand that is well-known. The answer is, as a provider of the services, how are you building your brand? And again, we've spent a lot of time in building brand Unicus. There are many ways to do it. I think social media is an amazing opportunity for people to build their brand. Most people don't use it effectively. LinkedIn, and this is free advertising for LinkedIn out here, has been our biggest kind of game. in terms of how we effectively highlight what is happening at Unicus to the rest of the world, events, conferences, thought leadership, right? Many of you have some amazing abilities. So how are you translating that into positioning your brand in the market? I would very strongly urge that even as you do good work, it's very important to build and to position your brand out there, because even if the buyer has an inertia, at least you as a seller are making yourself more visible from a decision perspective. So brand building extremely crucial. Normally I avoid jargon. So I hate words like client-centric and all that stuff which management consultants use. But I genuinely mean here that effectively the new age professional services firm will not worry about geographies. A lot of big companies struggle with that. And I'll tell you this story which you may be able to relate to. How many of you are familiar with the SPAC market in the US, the special purpose acquisition companies, right? SPACs, familiar? The SPAC market was amazingly hot till 2018. Consultancy work in the US on SPACs was selling at $400 an hour, $350 to $400 an hour. All the big four firms in the US ran out of capacity. Yeah? All capacity sold out. So what should they have done? What would a logical setup do? A logical setup would say, we've run out of capacity in the United States. Why can't we effectively go to places like India, Philippines, Mexico, wherever these capabilities lie? That did not happen. And that effectively resulted in a lot of American companies who actually were boutique companies. There's a company, people who operate in that market will know, called the Corner Group. They built a $200 million business on the back of this capacity which the big firms could not meet, because they were not client-centric. They did not look at the client, they looked at their own silo, which in this case was a geographical silo, right? So the important point is that if you have to be a new age professional services firm, how do you break through this silo of geography? How do you break through this silo of departments? Many of you, I don't know how you experience this, but this whole thing about my client, this division's client, what does the client actually want? And I'll tell you this very funny anecdote. When audit rotation came in, one of the big decisions that many companies had to, or many big consultancies had to take, was whether you should take that company as an audit client or a non-audit client, right? Because it creates conflicts. And I remember this amazing discussion with 27 people on a call, all having a point of view on whether it should be an audit client or a non-audit client. Of course, it's very well pitched, right? Because there are 13 people from one side, 13 people from another side. The 27th person was not relevant, but 26 people. At some stage, one very young person said that all of this is fine, but what does the client want? Usko kya chahiye actually, right? We are all thinking about whether we should do audit or non-audit. What exactly does a client want out here? I think it's very important for us to think about client centricity in that sim, and that's the way we organize ourselves at Unicus. We have only two P&Ls globally. We have ESG P&L, and we effectively have accounting, reporting, consulting P&L. We don't have any geographical P&L, despite having presence in all the geos that I kind of spoke about, right? So again, something to think about. I think when you are client-centric, what we also realize is that you can't do everything on your own. You have to build an alliance ecosystem. So we work very closely with law firms. So when law firms have transactions to deal with, where they have accounting issues to deal with, we come in. We work very closely with consulting companies like Alvarez and Marcel, because they have capabilities which we don't have. We come together. We work very, very closely with technology companies. So just to share a recent thing, we were working on a transaction where a client of ours wanted some advice on a finance function transformation, but we realized that on top of that, there was a big outsourcing opportunity. So we worked with WNS in that instance, where WNS and us came together, stitched a solution, and again, unfortunately for Accenture, beat Accenture, right? Now, we could not have done this on our own, because you may know finance transformation and shared services, but we don't have the ability to implement shared services or outsourcing. WNS may or may not have been able to do it on their own, because they may not have the consulting skills, and that's where the combination of a Unicus and a WNS becomes so much more powerful than even a very big global company like Accenture, right? So I think that's really to think about how do you build an alliance ecosystem as you go about doing this. So I think for me, it's really important that if you have to be a relevant professional services firm, honestly, size does not matter. People ask me, how big will Unicus be? I don't know. I don't care actually. We don't measure Unicus by the number of people we have. In fact, I'll be happier if we can replace 1/3 of our people with technology, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So that's not a parameter for us. We don't care about the number of people we have, but we want to be relevant to our clients, and we want to be in the markets and the clients we operate to be seen as a credible alternative to the big consultancies, right? That's really the way we see it. So that's about clients. Almost 90% of, so Unicus has 40 partners and directors now. Almost 90% are people who were the top partners in big consulting companies actually, 90%, top partners, the most high performing partners. And the question, actually many of them, when we ask this question, why did you join? Unicus, or why would you want to be a part of Unicus? A lot of people effectively talked about purpose actually. What are we doing at Unicus which is different from what they get to do at a big consultancy company? So in this case, if you kind of offer talent and say, listen, if you are a specialist in ESG, this is the place where you can do very meaningful work. You can work across boundaries, right? You can do things because all of our investments are focused in these areas that attracts people. People want the purpose and meaning in what they do. And this is not just partners, this is people across the whole talent stream, right? So we're seeing that work. But of course, purpose has to be backed by culture and values. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. It's very important that, see, we have some big benefits, right? If you're not a big global company, you have a big benefit of being very close to your people, being caring about your people. But how do you translate that in actual conduct in terms of culture and values? We have found that to be very, 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 very important in terms of attracting talent. But you also need to tell your story. It's all about storytelling. I tell you, I challenge my teams. When people come to me and say that, look, we build a brand, I actually have a separate brand strategy for talent and a separate brand strategy for client actually. It's amazing in terms of how this works. So when we go to the talent market, what is it that we talk about? We basically talk about, you know what, you are not constrained by audit, non-audit conflicts. There's a very funny story. We recruited somebody, and I asked this person, very high-performing person, why did you basically join Unicus? And they said, because I want to escape from the world of auditing actually. So that became a thing for us to say, how do you use that? If that's what resonates with, I'm not saying right or wrong, so the auditors don't take out your tomatoes and eggs at this stage for me, okay? But the point is, how do you really talk to what talent wants? Or global mobility. Because we are a global organization, we enable our people to go and work across geographies. So you may be somebody from India, but you're working in the US. You may be an American, but working on a client in Abu Dhabi, right? That resonates with people. So we effectively do that. Our talent wants, again, the fact that, how focused we are in the area they operate in. So I think the point really is build your brand with talent, because it's not enough. Don't assume that talent knows all the good work you're doing. So how are you going to attract the talent of the future? We love diversity. When I say diversity, I don't mean only diversity in terms of male, female. I have gone into many offices of Indian firms that have expanded globally, and it feels to me I walked into India again. If you want to be a global firm, you got to bring in global talent. So we have a Vietnamese American leader, we have a Greek leader, we have a Chinese leader, we have a Saudi kind of local, we have an Emirati leader, and we were in fact, in Unicus, we have a mandate on diversity on how you cannot recruit more than X percentage people of Indian origin actually. Why are we doing it? We're not discriminating. We genuinely want to encourage diversity. We also don't want to fall into the trap of bringing in people who just like us, right? It's very easy, given that me and my co-founder come from a Big Four background, it's very easy to say, we are very comfortable with a top consulting company, let's bring in talent from top consulting company. No, we're bringing in people from industry, we're bringing in people from specialized firms, we're bringing in people from different types, because genuinely we want to encourage diversity. Our chief technology officer comes from Amazon. we can't understand 90% of the time what he says, okay? Jamil, yeah? We don't understand what he says. But we love him for that, because if we understood what he said, he's not adding to the equation actually. So we love people who come in with a very diverse set of thinking, which results in conflict, which results in different views kind of coming in, right? So that's the point on diversity of talent. And a tricky one, I think everybody who wants to build a firm for the future has to learn how to share wealth. If you don't share wealth, if you want to control wealth, okay, talent's not going to work for you actually. People have much better opportunities. So, you know, we have 23% of Unicus's equity belongs to our partners, MDs and directors actually. Transparent. Everybody in the world knows that 22.48% belongs to the partners, managing directors and directors. That is what. So if Unicus becomes a $1 billion company in the next 5-7 years, they will own $225 million wealth. That's really the gig. And that's what people like, because at the end of it, people want to know that even I am not just a partner who's called a partner but is a glorified employee. I'm genuinely somebody, for the wealth that I create, I will get a share of that wealth. So how do you basically create that, right? I think that's resonated well with our people. You know, this is something I was very, very heartened by this. I was actually at a campus and in Delhi, and one lady basically, and she said, I want to join Unicus because Unicus has the agility of a startup with the stability of a big company. How do you create that actually? Because many startups or many specialized firms do not give the confidence to talent of being a big enough platform for them. So they don't feel that pride. They don't feel that they're part of something big. On the same time, people who are in that big platform feel very suffocated with the lack of agility, because of bureaucracy, because of regulation, procedures, whatever that might be. So if you are able to create, in my mind, an organization which is agile like a startup, but has the stability and scale of a big company, that's really impactful in what's going to happen in the future. So again, some thought to be spent on that. Technology. So we spoke about clients, we spoke about talent, technology. I think our profession has been very, very slow in embracing technology. You know, and I don't want to embarrass people out here. If I ask a third follow-up question on what ChatGPT actually does, or what generative AI really is, I think 90% of people I meet falter. Not because they are not capable of understanding, but they not spend time in understanding what's going on out there. I think technology is going to really, really change the way how professional services is done. I've taken a few examples and there are many others. There's a company called H2O.ai. It's run by a friend of mine out of the Bay Area, Shri Ambati. So when we were trying to conceptualize a few things, we basically, you know, I was trying to explain on what we are trying to do in the world of sustainability and reporting. And at some stage, you know, Shri had this very perplexed look on his face. So I thought, you know, it's a very complex problem to solve, right? He said, no, it's not about that. I'm just thinking, is it exciting enough for my engineers to work on? So what we think is complex is actually very plain vanilla. It's just the ability to embrace the functional and the technology bit that's important. PwC actually won a few years ago. They partnered with H2O.ai on a product called GL.ai. Look it up if you're interested, on how you can bring in AI into auditing. The second company, again, I love the company. It's a Canadian company called Mindbridge. Again, they operate in the auditing space, and their gig really is, instead of picking up samples of transactions, how can you use technology and AI to predict problems and pick up samples then that could be audited more meaningfully, right? All of these are aids. The third example, which I've cited out there, is again a company in the Bay Area who we know. The CFO told me, and he was featured, that he was so fed up with internal IT not being able to solve a problem that he just used ChatGPT to create his own solution of doing what he wanted to do in the finance function. You know, a finance guy creating code on the back of what ChatGPT allows you to do. So I think the question to ask really is, are we even understanding what's happening in that world? Forget embracing it, right? But before embracing, you got to understand this. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I'm going to show you something. Hopefully this works here. You know what happened there? So 600 pages of contracts, 600 pages. 7 company policies to be compared to, which you are entering into to confirm whether the contracts comply with company policy or not. 38 seconds. It analyzed the contracts, it basically picked up what did not comply and redrafted that for you. There's a company called Case Text in the Bay Area. They got a product called Co-Counsel. Law firms use them extensively. This is the power, folks, of what technology will do to the professional services industry. We can keep on saying we do real high-end work, real stuff, but we have to realize that a third to a half of the work that we do will be replaced by products like these. And the sooner we embrace this, the more we will be able to be more relevant to our clients and our people that we kind of spoke about earlier. We are using, this is a very interesting example. We are playing on this a little bit. So what this is basically showing out here, earlier, if you had to produce a lot of reports, you would effectively find out where information was coming from. You would try and either compile that information through automation or whatever, and then you would do some stuff. Now with Gen AI, you can pick up this information, and what this does is, when the documents come out, obviously the documents will not be perfect, right? There's a lot of work to be done. When you edit the document, the machine is effectively learning from your edits actually and feeding that back into the AI programming so that the next time around the report is better. So we are doing this for some work that we are doing and a product that we are creating, but once again it's a great example of how technology and humans can work together to create something which will be relevant to our clients in the future. I'm sure you guys understand finance. So I think this question, the question I want to ask, I'm mindful of time. How many minutes do I have? 5 more minutes? Yeah. So now I described to you what is going to happen and how I see the professional services firm of the future in terms of serving our clients, dealing with talent, dealing with technology. So where is the money going to come from? Where is the money? Yeah? There are only 2 sources of money, gentlemen and ladies, 2 sources of money. One source of money is we as partners and owners invest a portion of our profits to do all of this. Companies have done that well, right? Equally, I think private capital has now understood there's a gold mine sitting as far as this whole industry is concerned. Remember I talked about the SPAC market earlier? So when the SPAC market happened and the big 4 were not able to serve that market fully, just like I mentioned the Corner Group, there was another company called CFGI. Yeah? I'm giving them free publicity, but it's a case talking about. CFGI was started by 2 people in the year 2000 in the United States. Good people. They took 18 years to ride on Sarbanes-Oxley and build a nice company, 7,500 people company, $30 million revenue, whatever. Carlyle discovered them, the private equity. Carlyle bought 66% of CFGI in that year, and Carlyle used them for a bunch of IPO SPAC advisory work that Carlyle portfolio companies had to do. September 21, 3 years, 600 people, $300 million revenues. $300 million revenue. In September 21, Carlyle sold 33% of their 66% to CVC, $1.8 billion valuation of this company. $1.8 billion value created. I don't know whether that's 1.8 is real or not. Okay, I always debate with my team because we are worth 1.8 billion by that token now. But limited point is there is private capital that is effectively chasing the professional services industry. How many of you have heard of CBiz? Vaibhav is a devotee of CBiz. But no. Honestly, CBiz is an amazing story. And I could be partially wrong here, but it's the only listed CPA firm in the United States. Listed CPA firm. CBiz found there's a very interesting way in which you can segregate your audit business and have that as a partnership, take your non-audit business effectively and have that as a consultancy, and they listed the company. They have been on a buying spree. They spend $100 million a year buying up and rolling up companies and aggregating smaller practices to build a large global player, right? Public capital available. KKR, the private equity, bought a consultancy called ERM, which is the world's largest environment consultancy. As some of you may be aware, Ernst & Young tried to do this by breaking the business and effectively creating a consultancy which will be a consultancy for the future, technology, all of the stuff that I spoke about. And you know, Unicus itself is an example where we have Nexus Ventures out of the US and India as our lead investor. On the back of that, we've done a bunch of acquisitions, and we'll continue to do that as we kind of grow. So I think capital is available. It's just about whether it's internal capital which you invest yourself or external capital that's kind of available to you to do what you have to do. Now finally, how do you bring all of this to life? We believe in 4 things at Unicus, which I'll share with you. I think vision, yeah. As this stuff says, if you don't aim high, you won't get nowhere actually. When we set up Unicus, you know what our tagline is? Change the way consulting is done. People said that's audacious. You know, your day 0, you know, you're talking about changing the way consulting is done. We believed in it. We still believe that we have a very different model. We use technology, we are global, we do a bunch of things which make us very different. I think the first thing is, do we as founders, owners, partners of a company, do we have the vision to do something really, really audacious, right? And I think that's something for you to challenge yourself. I really like this saying, greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but it's too low and we reach it actually. Reaching a goal, if we said on day 0 we'll be $100 million in 5 years. Publicly we said that. We would have humiliated ourselves by saying, listen, what are you talking about? But we are on track, we aimed high, we'll get higher. Vision is okay, but culture, I spoke about this earlier. We really believe in culture and values. We follow a set of values called ACTED, A-C-T-E-D. The reason we came up with that is because I find values are very difficult to remember actually, particularly for the new age people. So we focused on agility, collaboration, trust, excellence, and drive impact, which is ACTED. So everything at Unicus is measured against the values of ACTED, and that then builds a culture within the organization, right? But to build that culture, you need leadership. I was telling somebody in the break that the problem with many leaders is that they want followers. Horrible mood. We don't want followers, we want leaders. We want other leaders in the organization. So we don't want to be 1, 2, 3 co-founders, founders running the company. We want 40 leaders running the company. And in my experience, that's the best way. If you can build more leaders, you will be more successful. And that's really, really critical, I think. And finally, I love what Edison said, vision without execution, hallucination. Look, what I just said is not rocket science, okay? Many people can do it, could have done it, will do it, hopefully, yeah? Ultimately, it boils down to, are you able to translate that vision into the right culture in your company, provide the right leadership, and execute so that you achieve what you have to achieve actually. And that's really where we are in the journey of Unicus. And again, I want to thank you and everybody for this opportunity. It's been a great journey. We are 1 year old. Like I said earlier, we are 300 plus people across 6 offices. We have already upped our plans to be $150 million in 5 years as opposed to $100 million. Yeah, that's our journey, and would love to take any questions that people have actually. So do we have time for questions? Or maybe one? Okay, I'll take the most difficult question. I think we've covered, so I think the questions were around technology and expanding globally. I think I covered all of them, and if there are no further, big questions, then I think that's it. But look, I'm really grateful again for BCAS for having me here. I really appreciate it. I hope some of it, what I said, resonates with you, gets you thinking as you build your own companies in whichever way, and I wish you all the very best for the rest of the conference. So thank you very much. Thank you.